Hello, everyone. Welcome to Coffee with Convery, where we explore stories, insights, and careers that inspire the next generation. In this special edition of Legacy in Motion Black History Month, I sit down with Reggie Waterman, a visionary leader in marketing, mentorship, and professional development. With over 15 years of experience driving strategies in Canada's largest communications and technology companies, Reggie has built a career at the intersection of innovation and at leadership. He's also the founder of Next 10, an easy app Apply Inc. He is dedicated to empowering professionals, fostering career growth, and helping people unlock their full potential. His passion for mentorship, his community impact has made him a driving force in supporting emerging talent. So, whether you're an entrepreneur, aspiring professional looking to level up, or someone just navigating the complexity of career growth, this conversation is for you. Reggie, welcome to Coffee with Convery.
Ryan, thanks for having me. Good morning.
Amazing, amazing to see you this morning. Thank you. So to kick it off, why don't we start with some rapid fire questions? What's your superpower?
Connector of people, places, and things.
Awesome. Favorite subject in school?
Gym.
Gym. Yeah, the athletic side of you.
Yes.
And what was your very first job?
Newspaper delivery person.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
Yeah,
Eh,
this is like elementary school. You talking about like back then? Like
Yeah,
very first?
yeah. I think that it's good to go back then. That's what I encourage. So yeah, so that started young. Started young. Good. And if you had to describe yourself in one word, what would it be?
Dynamic.
Dynamic. Okay, so that leads me to the first in-depth conversation question here. And you've had a dynamic career journey, marketing strategist, product leader, entrepreneur, mentor. Can you walk us through a little bit of your career path and what inspired you to take this lead into entrepreneurship?
Yes. So at a very high level glance in terms of where my career path went, um, most of my time, I would say about 12 years was spent in telecom.
Okay.
Working for the big giants, both Rogers and Bell. And what's funny about those stories is that there was a lot of back and forth between starting off at Rogers and then actually starting off at Bell through an internship after
Okay.
graduating from Pearson, and then eventually going to Rogers, leaving Rogers to go work at a German company for 6 months. Didn't really like it there. Went back to Rogers for a period of like about a year or so, and then left to go to Bell. And then Bell stayed there for about 5 years, came back to Rogers eventually for a short stint. So there's a lot of back and forth there. But I was on the marketing teams at both companies. But even just during that time, it was I was managing the accessory portfolio, and it's like the best kept secret. It's your cases, your screen protection, your Bluetooth speakers, but you had a chance to negotiate with some of the biggest brands like Samsung, OtterBox, JBL. Those are some fun.
Nice.
There's a lot of perks. But after telco, I transitioned over to software and worked for some mid-sized companies doing product marketing there. And I always had this knack for entrepreneurship. So a lot of it was, working on side hustles, working on passion projects, whether it's a podcast, whether it was, developing my app, which is Easy Apply, and that was
Yeah.
to revolutionize the recruiting process. But then Next 10, which is my most recent venture, almost 2 years old, and that was just to empower people and help them also discover their own purpose. But also it was to just really inspire other people to really be true to themselves. So this is where I'm at right now.
Awesome, awesome. And I've been blessed to be a part of Next 10 and you're doing great stuff there. I could see it just participating, being a part of it and seeing the impact you're having. So we need more Reggies in the world. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Amazing. So this is Black History Month. We know it's a time to celebrate achievements, reflect on progress, and really acknowledge the ongoing struggles for equality and justice. For you, what does Black History Month mean to you, both personally and professionally?
So I would say personally, it's of course a reflection of, the struggles that the culture has gone through.
Mm,
Uh, Back in the day, of course, with slavery, but it's also recognizing the hardships and how, us as a people have overcome that through generations and, really coming together to make some serious strides so that we could evolve and contribute to society at the end of the day. Um, Professionally, it also means just representing, who I am. This is me, right?
mm,
When you get into a lot of spaces and you are a minority in a lot of rooms that I walk into, there is a sense of pride because you just stand out just based
yeah.
on as soon as you enter that room. Um, and I think that's the privilege, right? There's a lot of buzzwords out there that talk about white privilege. There's also black privilege, and the privilege to me is just being who I am, being authentic to who I am, being the fact that I could stand out in a crowded space where my uniqueness is always on display, my personality shines. I offer up something different. I offer up something that's innovative, creative, um, and that's just what it means to me professionally. I'm able to look at things and become resilient. And I don't know if that's
Hmm.
just through DNA, but that's just what it means to me. So anything that I've ever faced personally, professionally, I've always able to overcome them in
Hmm.
a is always showing grace. It's always showing pristine ability to just look forward and continuously build and create for not just for myself, but also for my family.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for those insights. It's great to hear. Your work focuses on a lot, as you just said, innovation, transformation for branding and career growth. How have these diverse experiences shaped your approach to your own leadership and mentorship?
Yeah, it took me a while to get here,
Yeah,
Brian.
yeah,
So I would follow like this path that everyone usually follows. And it's, how do I climb up that corporate ladder? There's a formula, there's a rhythm in terms of like how do you do it? You got to talk a certain way, you got to move a certain way. I remember an executive at Bell told me, you got to act presidential, and that to me was just like, well, what do you mean I can't just be myself? So I would play a role, right, to kind of fit
yeah.
in. But I realized that, you know, I am a brand, like just like you, Brian, you are a brand, and we all have our own unique attributes that contribute to who we are and what we offer this world.
Yeah.
And as a brand for me, and you ask me like, what's that one word that describes me? I'm dynamic. I know that I don't need to fit into a mold. That's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
not me. There's just something very special and unique about all of us, and that we have to allow that component to shine more than fitting into a mold or being in a box. So my brand allows me to really think about, well, how do I want to move and shake within the spaces that I'm given the opportunity to interact with others? Remember, I mentioned about my superpowers being a connector of people,
Yep.
places. So as soon as I interact, I'm always being intentional with how I deliver, how I make other people feel, deliver empathy, and so forth. So that's what my brand really truly represents.
I think what you said there is super important and for the listeners to really hear and even hit rewind on this part because to your point, this point of being put in a box or kind of, the conversation you had with the executive telling you, to be a certain way, I think that's not unusual. I think a lot of people have those experiences, and sometimes they feel their only way is to take that advice, right? And I think you probably had experiences. I've had experiences where I probably took a little bit of it, and then I was like, this ain't right. Like, this isn't me, right? And I would challenge others to think about that because if we don't speak up and don't try to challenge us now, we just have a bunch of, yes people. And I think to have I hate using the word courage because we should all be who we are without courage, but I think you shared some really great insights with this conversation and that specifically that I hope many of you are listening. Like, think twice about it, right? Like, at the end of the day, you need to be you because you need to be happy, right? I mean,
Yes, you're not yourself. You're definitely, I would say you're just going through the motions. And to me, that doesn't, for me personally, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but that doesn't represent a level of happiness that I want for myself. I want to be able to be me and do things that I enjoy and interact with people that I want to interact with.
that's right. That's right. 100%. So, a lot of the listeners here are young people, careers, different aspects in that journey. Some people rejiggering, rethinking, and maybe even upskilling for something new. What advice do you have for people looking to pivot, especially with maybe faced with uncertainty or even some of those systematic barriers?
Yeah, for the youth, I would always say it's everything is trial and error.
Okay.
There's not one specific formula that defines success because everybody has their own path. But when it comes to trial and error, I highly encourage you to just try new things, right? Whether it's building a skill set, like for example, like Brian, when you went on your journey just to do your podcast, think about the first minute that you tried facilitating this system,
Yeah.
right? There's
Yeah.
behind the scene work. It wasn't perfect from the first go. I bet your
No.
episode number is totally different than your episode today, but through trial and error. So
That's
that's
right.
just an example of how to kind of level up and develop a skill set. I would always say also it's about relationships. So form those relationships early. Find your community. Find out ways that you could contribute. One thing that I'd always say as well is just to create. Um,
Mhm.
I always had this notion, and I think 2019 was like my biggest like wake up moment where I wanted to become. There's a difference between a consumer and a creator, and the consumer is just constantly, taking in whether it's content, whether it's buying or purchasing whatever items might be personal to you. But as a creator, you have the ability to actually build something, construct something, whether it's creating an app, creating a podcast, it's creating a framework, and then sharing that with others because at the end of the day, there's a value there. And see if there's any customers that you could that would be able to utilize your creation, right? That's the contribution. That's the innovativeness that young people need to have. And with I think my biggest advice for young folks is to, because at the end of the day, they're early adopters of new
Great.
technology. Learn it, study it, and then teach others how to apply it, because that will be a skill set that's going to be needed, especially for companies and organizations that are still trying to figure out how to leverage AI. And that's a huge opportunity for the young folks today.
Yeah, that's some great insights there as well. And teaching it gives you that whole nother perspective too, where you're learning as you're teaching too. So it's such a great thought. And thank you for sharing. That's a good one. Okay, thinking about brands and opportunities and what are some of the biggest challenges you see for job seekers today and maybe how they could stand out in this competitive market when they think about their own brand? As you said, you have yours, I have mine. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I feel, man, the marketplace is tough. You know,
It is.
I
We
went,
both know that.
I mean, that period where I was what, you know, outside of the entrepreneurship, right now, thank God I was able to secure a job at Yorkville University as well.
Yeah,
It was what, a period of almost 8 months,
yeah,
trying to get back on my feet. So for young folks, the job opportunities are very scarce at the moment,
yeah.
very scarce. Companies are not willing to give people fresh out of school the opportunities, right? A lot of them are saying, well, you need at least 2 to 3 years experience. And then the students are like, well, 2 to 3 years experience. I just spent all this money getting my degree or a diploma, whatever the case may be. And you're telling me that I still need 2 to 3 years experience. How do I get that if you're not willing to take a chance on me? So in order to overcome that, um, there's internships are still available. There's
That's
co-op.
right. Yeah,
That's how you can garnish up that experience. But also, it's about networking. Figure out within, go on LinkedIn. I encourage people, like young people all the time, create content. If there's something specific that you are very curious about and you could talk about it, create a post. You might not get the traction or engagement right away, but over time, as you continuously be consistent with it, people are going to start to engage with other people's posts, right? I think
Hmm.
that's a missing skill set for the young folk because they feel, well, who's going to listen to me? But nobody's going to listen if you don't put yourself out there. That's the
That's
problem.
right. That's right.
And once you start to go through those cycles, you'll start to gain the traction. You'll start to gain the credibility and the confidence in people that you're trying to, or companies that you're trying to, let's say, apply for. And I always say this, Brian, it's like, well, if Mark has created a series of different content pieces, posted up on LinkedIn as an example, versus Sally, she hasn't. In a job interview, who's going to have a more dynamic and productive conversation when they're talking experiences? Well, Mark will because he's done his research. He's got social proof out there. He's
Yeah.
got like mini portfolio that he could share with that the person the interviewer. Whereas Sally, she's oh, I don't really have the experience. I haven't really have done anything. I've just been applying for jobs. To me, Mark stands out because he's gonna actually put his best foot forward if he takes this job.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think too, people, like you said, are afraid to say, well, who's going to listen to me? Who wants to hear from me? And it's, when you think about all the stuff you do in your, especially for young people on the personal side of contributing to different content, it's using that same mindset over here with the professional side of careering to kind of figure out, just get started because
Mhm.
people do read it or do listen. And a lot of recruiters, when we go to look at people's backgrounds and things, we also look at your social impact and what you're saying, what you're doing, right? So your advice is really spot on with that. I think it makes a lot of sense. You talked a lot about networking too, and I think that's super important. What's your thoughts on mentorship? How's that worked for you, and what do you think around that?
Mentorship is great. It's great. I've had multiple mentors like throughout my career. They come and go just like friends. That's just part of life. But mentors are great because they give you access to knowledge. Access to a number of things:
Hmm.
knowledge, insights, resources, and people, right?
Yep.
Because you get a chance to tap into their network. If let's just say you have aspirations to get a job in XYZ industry, well, they could put you in touch with somebody else. But at the same time, they're giving you guidance along the way. Also, holding you accountable. That's what a good mentor would do. In the event that they know what you are striving for, they could help keep you focused and say, from our last conversation, well, Brian, you wanted XYZ. What's the status on that? And it's a gut check for you because you're like, hey, well, I need to deliver on XYZ, which I promise to, not just for myself, but even for my mentor, because I'm utilizing their time.
Right. Absolutely. I noticed your shirt says be great, which, I know you're great. I think you're awesome. I'm glad you're on this podcast with me today. But with the theme of it being legacy and motion and things about that, what is your legacy you hope to leave when all is said and done here on this planet Earth?
Okay, no, this is a great question because I keep on telling myself, this is my mark, the mark I want to leave. And I said this in the last next 10 event last year. And I'm like,
Yeah.
it's about generational love, man. It's the love. It's the love. And what I mean by that, it's just the feeling, the emotion, the compassion, the kindness that you have for others. We
Yeah.
kind of share that with other folks so that we can definitely create that ripple effect. And, I have two kids and I want to make sure that they take into account that concept so that they can now pass it on to people that they interact with or kids that they have in the future so that legacy continues to build. That's the foundation because at the end of the day, whether or not we choose to believe it or not, we are all connected. It doesn't matter about race, color, size, whatever the case may be, we're all connected and we have to show love to each other. So my that's my mark. And I got to do that in many different forms in terms of the communities that I built through Next 10.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So, and seriously, it's so impactful. I recently was talking to a young woman who said the next few generations need to learn compassion again.
Mm.
And I think, but if we don't lose it now, then we can in, in, impact it for the future. So great thoughts on that. And really thank you for making us think about that as we all listen to this podcast, because we all can take a part in that, right? You can all love and make contact and impact that as well as individuals. Reggie, thank you so much for sharing your journey, the empowering work you're doing. Your dedication and mentorship, leadership, innovation is so inspiring. I really thank you for what you're doing and joining me on this special edition of Legacy in Motion. So thank you.
No, and I want to thank you, Brian, for putting this together. Like, taking this moment in time where it's like, we're focusing on Black history and, you're contributing to that. One piece that I would love to leave for your, your viewers, your listeners is even though we celebrate the history and we recognize what it is, we also need to look forward. And I
Mm,
always want, encourage people to say, instead of Black history, well, what does the Black future look like? Or what does just people future look like? Because at
yeah.
the end of people, how do we add value to each other's lives? And this right here, just having a conversation, this is a basic form of conscious, but it's yet so powerful.
Yeah.
Kudos
Yeah.
to you for doing
Thank
that.
you, man. Thank you. Really great having you. And for our listeners, if you've enjoyed today's podcast, you can share it with your network, please. And you can also follow us on now coffeewithconvery.com or on your favorite podcast platform. This is Coffee with Convery, where we show you that success isn't just about climbing the corporate ladder. Sometimes it's about building that jungle gym right here. All right,
The gym, yes.
there you go. Thanks, everyone, and great to see you, Reggie.
You too, Brian.